Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church at Home with Bishop Rachel for Friday, the 14th of March. As I've been sort of continuing to unpack, which is really weird for me because over the years I've become an expert at unpacking, but here I am a year later still unpacking things. I came across a whole pile of things that had these little tabs in them um, everywhere because these are things I thought, oh, I could talk about that on Church at Home. And so I'm discovering old things I had tucked away and thought, oh, there's an idea. And for today, I'm using a resource called Our Daily Bread from June, July, and August of 2022. It seems like a really long time ago. When I would have read this, I know that it would have been the first office I had in my house in Wainwright, in the second house we had, and my dog Dude would have been lying at my feet as I did the prayers to uh, to read when I read this in the first place. So I'm going to share with you this passage from Wednesday, June the 15th, 2022. It's called Investing in Others. It says here, when a corporation offered 1,000 frequent flyer miles for every 10 purchases of one of their foods, one man realized their cheapest product was individual cups of chocolate pudding. He bought more than 12,000. For $3,000, he received gold status and a lifetime supply of air miles for himself and his family. He also donated the pudding to charity, which netted him an $800 tax write off. Genius. Jesus told a controversial parable about a cunning manager who, as he was being fired, reduced what debtors owed his master. The man knew he could rely on their help later for the favor he was doing them now. Jesus wasn't praising the manager's unethical business practice, but he knew we could learn from his ingenuity. Jesus said we should shrewdly use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Luke chapter 16, verse 9. As the pudding guy turned 25-cent desserts into flights, so we may use our worldly wealth to gain true riches. What are these riches? Jesus said, give to the poor, and you will provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. Our investment doesn't earn our salvation, but it does affirm it. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And he says here, question is, how have you recently helped meet someone else's physical needs? Why is your charity an investment? And the prayer is, loving God, help me to invest in the poor for Jesus' sake and yours. Yesterday, I was watching, I think I was waiting for my computer to upload a video or something. It was taking its time. So I was just watching something online, and I really like Tim Walz, the former vice presidential candidate, and his son Gus. And he was talking to somebody about the cuts to the Department of Education, and he said that this idea that you're cutting from education, it would be people like his own son who has an individualized education plan. That when you cut those things, you're cutting the possibility of young men or women and other people who are disabled, like Gus, to be able to have their own lives, to learn and to go about their life. He said, you know, the small things we do invest in the lives of others. And I got thinking about that, about, this idea that world, like using the wily ways of the world to actually invest in ourselves and others. And there's places where Jesus, says things like, "Be as sly as a fox, and as innocent as a dove," things like that. We're called to be real about the life we live in, the reality of our world. We're not called to wander around like I sometimes accuse myself of being Pollyanna, and just not even aware of the crappy things that are happening. The thing is, we need to be aware of those things. If we don't, then we could get hurt. If I am so Pollyanna-ish that I think, well, I would never break into someone's house, so I don't need to, then I'm not going to lock my doors. If I don't lock my doors and somebody breaks into my house, well, then my insurance won't cover it. But the point being that we can't, just because we want to live in a world in which bad things don't happen or people aren't crooked, doesn't mean that we do. And part of being who we are as Christians means we have to be facing the truth. We have to face reality. And then we make the decision. Making us smart is like the guy who got the chocolate pudding cups and donated them for charity, but also then was able to have lifetime supply of air miles. Brilliant. Um, we have to be willing to do the hard work of figuring out how do we walk ethically, morally, spiritually soundly in the world in which we live, because we can't just change our reality, but living in such a way that even though we're living in that world, we don't allow ourselves to become completely trounced by it or overwhelmed by it. And that's a big thing right now, is how do we make those decisions? How do we negotiate the potholes and the mountains and the valleys and all of the things that are happening, especially right now. So much is happening. In Canada, we've just had a turnover in Prime Minister, and we're probably about to have another election. And the rhetoric is ramping up. There are People are doubling down on Polyev or on Carney. People are ignoring the NDP, which I don't think is a smart thing to do. But people I'm worried that people are going to start paying so much attention to the nitty gritty nasty details that they don't pay attention to the other things. And the fact is that, yeah, we as Canadians have to be smart in the way that we move forward, in the way we cast our ballots, the way we choose who will be our leaders, and how we encourage them to use that leadership well. But at the same time, we have to recognize the world we're living in. We have to recognize that we have to be competitive. We have to recognize that our military needs to be funded properly. And that's one of those things that Canada, we're peacekeepers. Um, those people who have served in the military would tell you no. Canada haven't been peacekeepers for a long time. We participate in peacemaking and holding the peace, but we haven't been peacekeepers for a long time. But part of that means that if you want to have a safe world to live in, a safe country where you can trust that you aren't going to be invaded the way Russia invaded Ukraine, means that we have a strong defense. It's like having locks on the door. I recognize, having had a house broken into years ago when I lived on my own, I recognize how terrifying that is. And so I'm smart enough to know that I need locks on my door and I need to use them. Does that mean that I'm paranoid? No. Does it mean that I don't trust anybody? No. It means that I'm looking at the world around me, looking at it with clear eyes and saying, here are the things that I know I need to do for me to be able to still be an open-hearted, open-minded Christian person. And I think that's what we need to be called to do, is to recognize that we need to be able to live in the world but not of the world. We need to be able, it says here, the quote was from Luke 16:9 was, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves. Now that sounds really, really like, ugh. It feels kind of manipulative. But the fact is, you use the resources you have around you to make life the best it can be for you. And as Christians, making life the best we can be for us also means we make life the best for all those who are around us as well. So we don't do things like defund education or our medical system. Universal healthcare in Canada is one of the things that as a Christian I'm really proud of, because it means that yes, I can have quality medical care. And yeah, if I had millions, I could probably go and get, whatever medical care I needed, not cheaper, but certainly faster by the private sector. But do I really want to do that? Like, I don't have millions, so that's not a question. But really, at the end of the day, I prefer working within the system that we have because it works for everybody. If I work within the system that we have, recognizing that sometimes I'm going to gain benefits from the worldly people around me, as long as I'm willing to share those benefits that I've received from over here with the people over here who aren't worldly, who don't have those resources, then I think I'm balancing it out okay. I am not going to say, if somebody came up to me and said, I have $1 million and I want to give it to your church, and I'm not a churchgoer, and I don't really like you, but I'm going to give you the $1 million anyway, and I don't believe in Jesus and all those things. Sorry, my phone just rang. Yeah, I believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Jesus and all those things, but I'm still going to give you $1 million. I'm not going to say no to that $1 million. I'm going to say yes, thank you, because now I can serve all these people over here who do believe in Jesus and lots of people who don't. Not because I'm trying to turn them into Jesus followers, but because Jesus calls me to share with them, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to give shelter to those who are homeless. And your $1 million, even if it was given for the wrong reasons, is able to do that. It's being sly as a fox, innocent as a dove. Finding that balance of how do we make the best of the resources we have coming at us. It's really important that we do the balance of figuring that out. And especially in this day and age, how do we make smart decisions without feeling paralyzed or feeling like the world is too difficult around us? Because you know what? Yeah, the world is really quite crappy right now. It's not someplace where I wake up in the morning and say, hey, hot diggity dog, this is a great world to be in right now. I tend to wake up thinking, oh, I wonder what executive order was passed last night, and how that might impact Canada today. But at the same time, as soon as my feet hit the floor, then I also think of how might I impact Canada today? How might I have a positive impact on the people around me because I've learned things and because I pay attention, because I can, use the gifts that God has shared with me through the world so that I can help change the world. So, moral of the story for Friday is if you find a really great deal where you can buy pudding cups to get air miles, go for it. And then enjoy your family trips. But also, if you can't find the pudding cups, discover the beauty and the wonder and the gifts you can receive from the world around you, and then translate them into things you can do for other people. We aren't going to always be given easy things to deal with. But when we process them and deal with them ourselves, then we can make it easier for other people to deal with them, right? Have a great day, everybody. I will see you again on Sunday for Gospel on the Go or on Monday for Church at Home with Rachel. God bless.